Yeah, I ain't even gonna lie. I left y'all staring at the intro for just a little bit extra longer because I was dropping some chats to Steve and Lindsay. They haven't actually met each other. They only know each other through the chats watching the show. So the next time Lindsay's in town, I got to get Steve and Christy down here for. You know what? We'll we'll roast a damn Boston butt or something. Good morning. It's Tuesday, and oh my God, I missed you yesterday. I'm sorry I wasn't here, y'all. I I had some troubles, and I ain't gonna go into them a whole lot, but I will go so far as to say I spent the day yesterday convalescing, and I am convalescing to a less extreme degree from the same injury today. It was a little rough. And yesterday morning, I ain't gonna lie, I was awake. I could have done the show, and I looked at it and I said, nah, life still sucks too much for that. So I'm a we're going to be talking about capitalism today. We're going to be talking about it. We're going to get a little bit wonkish, a little bit philosophical, a little bit high level on it. And frankly, my objective with the show today is I do some of my best thinking by arguing with Cameron. So we're just going to do that in front of you guys today, like we're on the phone just having a conversation with each other. We're going to kind of argue about stuff, and hopefully Cameron is competent to give me pushback that's useful enough to build some interesting devil's advocates arguments, and on occasion even, good God, is Brittany really 22, Steve? Shit. Anyway, basically, this show is going to be all about thinking out loud, and once we're done with it, I'm going to have a couple of people, probably Rod, uh, probably my legal scholars, Rod Purvis and John Byrne. I'm going to have them go through it, and I'm going to ask them to do a couple of things. One, mark and lift some clips for me so that we can get some kind of highlights, some kind of short videos out of this, and then also I'm going to ask that they. Yeah, I'm going to have to mute you for a minute, Cameron. Um, I'm also going to ask that they give me a little bit of dissection. Uh, Damn, how do I mute you, son? No, that mutes me. Damn it. Yes, I do. And sometimes that means buying the right equipment. Anyway, um, okay, I'll do a quick shout out for Drew. Drew Drew's birthday was yesterday, so happy birthday, Drew. And Drew is running a birthday fundraiser for St. Jude Hospital. He's trying to raise $2,500. It's open till the end of the month. So if y'all see our boy Drew, that's Terrence Drew Daniels on Facebook. Uh, if you could throw a couple of bucks to St. Jude for him, he'd greatly appreciate it. And we appreciate you guys. Excuse me, looking out for each other. So, um, part of an argument like this involves rabbit holes. So I'm going to start with our first rabbit hole, being completely off topic, and just we've seen the news, the president having been convicted of coronavirus has served his prison term in quarantine over the weekend, and despite his being old and fat and sick, like they say, apparently he's whooped it and walked out. So the president is apparently doing quite well, and that should serve as a shining beacon of hope to the world. After all, he does have some comorbidities. The man is overweight. He is a
This is
septuagenarian. So with those two comorbidities coupled with coronavirus, I mean, he was in dire peril. His survival rate was only 95.5%. Yeah. So we got the Teflon Don back. Apparently, nothing sticks to him. Not even the Kung Flu. And now we can move on to the conversation. So here's my basic premise. I'm gonna do it like this, Cameron. I'm gonna lay out the premise for you, and then I want you to give me the first piece of pushback that you come across that your brain stumbles over. We're going to use the word capitalism to refer to the baseline of economics. Now, in this context, strictly speaking, the word capitalism is not precisely accurate because capitalism really refers to an ideological paradigm of economic structure. But you understand, as a person who speaks English, generally what capitalism means. And so the thing that we'll be referring to when we say capitalism is the very basic, unregulated, laissez-faire, free market, mercantile barter system that is voluntary, transactional contract between consenting parties. Essentially, I'll give you this blanket for your ass, so that I can load it up with other commodities for further trading. Not a sex joke.
Okay, fine. First bit of pushback. I would not include mercantile in your definition because one of the hallmarks of mercantilism is that there is not an unlimited amount of wealth that can be generated. There's a finite amount of wealth, and whoever holds the most of it holds the most of it, period, end of sentence. And that is not how true free markets and capitalism work. There's the opportunity to become the sum that is greater than your parts, and that doesn't exist in mercantilism.
Okay, fair point. Let me jot that down under the devil's advocate. It doesn't really belong there, but that's not. I don't have a separate section for it. I'll just Cam's Merc, and I'll make that part of the work going forward. So yeah, the objective here is going to be to produce a very polished and refined video essay on this topic, and that will be a much more published and produced piece of work. Okay, so ditching the mercantile language, how are we with the rest of that definition?
So far, so good.
Okay, so here's the thesis based on that definition. Capitalism, as understood by that definition, is the only economic system that exists. It is, in fact, I would argue in this context, not possible for there to be another economic system. As an economic system, what I'm saying is that communism does not exist. Socialism does not exist. Mixed economy does not exist. The base claim here is that all economies, all economic systems are in fact capitalism. And when you start introducing factors to them that make them what we call mixed economy, communism, socialism, etc., what you're describing is not that you have a different economic system. What you're describing is that you have capitalism with some degree of external interference. So when you say that you have a mixed economy, what you're saying is that our economy is truncated and tyrannized by the external influence of unreasonable regulations, which alter the natural function of economics as understood through the voluntary exchange of goods and services through consensual contracts.
Are there reasonable regulations outside of contract enforcement?
I'm glad you added that addendum, contract enforcement. I would argue no. Outside of
So,
contract enforcement, there are no reasonable regulations.
so the Glass-Steagall Act, which, without getting too far down into the weeds, is basically a law that said a firm can't over leverage itself and then bet against itself, so that even if the firm crashes, it still makes money. In other words, it forced banks to pick. You were either going to be a commercial bank or a private bank.
Right.
That's not reasonable That's not reasonable regulation. You can't have rules that ensure you operate in good faith, because I would say if you're going to bet against yourself, it's tough to make an argument that you're operating in good faith.
Okay. That's a really good one. Let me write down a note for that, and then I'll address it. So, going into Glass-Steagall, what you have to first understand is that we're already in an economy that has been perverted by external forces, has been perverted by other unreasonable regulations. You know, so what you're looking at is the very problems that something like Glass-Steagall seeks to address were caused by other regulations like Glass-Steagall. So every argument that you can make for the reasonableness of a regulation that interferes with free market exchange is an argument that stems from a problem which was caused by another interfering regulation. I will make that statement categorically without exception. A good example is take the complaint of the monopoly. Oh, capitalism's evil because you can end up with these giant monopolies that squeeze people out and destroy competition. False. There is no such thing as a monopoly without external interference. Literally every single monopoly that has ever occurred in human history has been the result of a government mandate for that monopoly to occur. A glowing example, Aflac is what Aflac is today because right after Aflac was founded in Columbus, Georgia, and I know this because I worked at Aflac for a little while, and we were put through this incredibly detailed history lesson about the company. Right after the founding of Aflac, they went to do business in Japan. And as they were negotiating for what the rules and regulations and laws in Japan would allow with regard to their insurance policies, and keep in mind, at the time, Aflac basically sold only cancer insurance. So it was, if you have an Aflac policy, all it does is if you get diagnosed with cancer, they stroke you a check that's meant to help you pay for the things that your health insurance doesn't cover. So, so Aflac goes to Japan, and part of the deal that they strike with the emperor in Japan is that they were granted by government fiat a 50-year monopoly on the sale of that insurance product in Japan. Now that monopoly has since expired, and they do now have competitors. But because they enjoyed that monopoly in the country of Japan for as long as they did, that was a huge piece of what allowed them to generate their initial revenue stream, which was overpriced. It was intentionally overmarked, and they still sold it like hotcakes because, hey, if you give me $100 a month, I'll write you a check for $100,000 if you happen to get cancer. Oh. I've already got health insurance.
Okay,
it was an easy sell.
I'm not talking about a monopoly, because you're correct. I mean, even going back to all the stuff with railroad barons and all that, when you do the research and you realize that there were local governments that wouldn't let other people build and everything, that I understand. But in a deeper level, there's, well, it's all a game. All of it is a game. And if you're going to play the game, you know what the rules of the game are. If you're going to play football, football is a violent sport in which people routinely get hurt, but there are still refs on the field to make sure that you follow the rules. And one of the reasons why I chose Glass-Steagall as the specific thing, okay, fine, Glass-Steagall was in response to other market interferences. So, how do you disincentivize that from happening without Glass-Steagall? Or is it not even appropriate for there to be a set of rules that govern? It's sort of like one of the things we enjoy. I have a checking account. That checking account is insured up to
Oh, God.
$250,000.
Cameron is falling apart.
Thing, but what I am saying, there are rules for the. Oh, do I sound that bad?
Oh, yeah. Fee says, don't apologize for Cameron's shortcomings. He's not your fault. I love my wife. Okay, so let's back up then real quick to the idea of rules and regulations vis-a-vis contract enforcement, because it's a deep dive to go back through the regulations that led up to the possibility of the problems which arose, which created the environment in which one could sell the idea of something like the Glass-Steagall Act. So let's back all the way up to the base level concept. A government. If I had my druthers, for what a government would be, and I've talked. Okay, hold on. I gotta mute you, Cameron.
I promise you'll be able to unmute me soon.
What in the hell, man?
Look, I can do it.
Okay, good. There we go. Yeah, you're killing me with that. So, the base level would be this. If I had my druthers, we would abolish all law as currently instituted, with the exception of the Constitution itself, to include all amendments past the 10th. And the law would essentially be that, assuming all of the assumed unenumerated rights are protected by the existence of a government whose sole power is to protect those rights as required by the citizens by whom the votes are cast. The only law is that the contract is sacred. Where a contract is entered into by two consenting and informed parties voluntarily to mutual benefit, the terms of that contract are sacrosanct and enforceable, not by law, but rather by a private court which issues a mandamus or a warrant, which can be used by a private security firm to enforce the contract when one party acts in bad faith. What this does is it leaves you the absolute freedom to do business with one another, which includes, by the way, gay marriage, because we're talking about a contract between people. See where I'm going with that? We're talking about liberty. So a contract between two voluntary consenting parties is a contract between two or more. You should stick with two. If you've got 3 men in an elevator, nobody knows who farted, or only one of you knows who farted. But in that system, concerns like what you're describing with the Glass-Steagall Act, where one party is committing fraud by over leveraging itself and then trying to short sell its stock or take a an indemnification against itself, that means that would be an act of bad faith within the confines of the contract. Now, within such a system, there would still be something roughly akin to a lawyer, but basically what a lawyer would do would not be to interpret the law. What a lawyer would do would be to write contracts. And your contracts wouldn't even necessarily have to be in the big flowery legalese that so many people seem to have a hard time reading, which I don't understand. I read it like I read legalese like it's a dime store novel. But the entire profession of law would essentially be the writing and interpreting of contracts. So that right there solves the whole question of something like Glass-Steagall, and it brings us back to the original point. The the economic structure itself, being capitalism at its base, is never not capitalism. It is only ever capitalism which has been perverted by an illicit and unreasonable external regulation.
Yes, I think anybody that's watched the show now knows that you'd replace everything with contract enforcement. Okay, all that being said, one more note to push back on, and again, specifically with regard to this with Glass-Steagall. If part of the problem with like guys like Bernie Madoff is once you discover that the fraud has occurred, the money's gone. Like you're not getting your money back. So it doesn't matter if you try and enforce your contract with Bernie Madoff. Sure, go after Bernie Madoff all you want. The only thing you can do is put him in jail because that money is gone. And any of the money that's not gone is so well hidden, it's effectively gone. Now, Bernie Madoff broke the existing set of laws that we have, no doubt. But I guess one of the things that I would be concerned about is that people would voluntarily go into these sorts of kind of pyramid Ponzi schemes because if you get in early and you pull out early, you're one of the people that gets rich. But once you run out of marks, there's a whole lot of people that go broke. And that's why I use the term good faith. You
Right,
got
it's like
to
Social Security.
well, you got to be able to do things in good faith. And one of the things that, like, I have a 401k, and I don't expect to ever get super rich off of it. But what I do expect is that if I contribute to it, I'll see the market fluctuations, I'll see them go up and down. But as long as everybody is acting in their own mutually assured self-interest, my 401k will grow over time. And like I say, it might not make me rich, but it will help fund a comfortable retirement one day. One day, a long way away.
Okay, so with Bernie Madoff as your example, and the complaint being that under my system, uh, once the fraud has been detected, the money's just gone. That's your basic concern there, right?
Well, I mean, yeah.
Okay. Under the existing system where Bernie Madoff committed the crime he committed, how much of that money was recovered?
That's irrelevant because the
No, it's
money's
not.
gone either way.
No, that's exactly. So what you're offering me is a problem which your system can't solve as a problem that you see can exist in my system. That the problem can exist in my system and cannot be solved by either system is irrelevant. You're
No,
offering a
what I
problem which cannot
suggest,
be solved.
what I'm suggesting is that there's the possibility for those types of problems to expand in your system because nobody knows what the general rules of the road are. If you go to play football, you expect to play a football game. If you go to Burger King, you expect to be able to get a Whopper. If you drive down the highway in America, you expect for all of us to be on the right side of the road and in the left seat of the car. There are certain things that are accepted either legally or socially as the norm, and it's part of what allows us to function.
Okay, okay, too easy. Um, we build cars in this country with the driver's seat on the left side of the car. Don't need a law for that. We're doing it already. It's happening. And the law does not require the driver's seat to be on the left side of the car. That's just how we do it here. You can buy a right side drive car and drive it in the United States, but you still have to drive it on the correct side of the road, right? Um, the drive which side of the road you drive on is enforced by law, but does it need to be? I mean, are we really worried about people just randomly driving on the wrong side of the road because
I
it's
drive
the
around Atlanta every day. I worry about it.
well, that it occurs is not directly connected to the legality of it. You don't drive on the wrong side of the freeway not because you're afraid that the police will pull you over and give you a ticket for doing that. You don't drive on the wrong side of the freeway because all of a sudden you're pointed at all the murder boxes. And well, we have a guttural aversion to being pointed at all the murder boxes. So, back to your point about people not understanding what the rules are, I would argue that the current system is much worse for that as a problem than the system I'm proposing. In what I'm talking about, you have a contract. The rules are only those rules to which you agree by the voluntary consensual entry into that contract with another voluntary party. You know what the rules are because you and the other party agreed to the rules as part of the construction of that contract. Whereas in the system we have today, the rule book is so very dense and thick. Because remember, what you're talking about with the Madoff scheme. You're talking about a large Ponzi scheme that involves securities trading, and that means that it gets into the tax code. So, quite simply, nobody, including Madoff, actually knew what all the rules were in order to break them. They had chosen some rules that they were aware of. Well, Madoff and his conspirators chose some rules of which they were already aware and chose to break those rules. But part of what got them caught is they forgot about other rules that they were breaking doing the same thing and didn't take precautions in that regard. And then part of what got the people involved sucked into a fraud is they did not correctly understand the rules surrounding the transaction that they were entering. And that's largely because their knowledge of those rules was obscured by the absence of their direct involvement in the creation of the contract which contained the rules. In a system like what I'm talking about, where you have a contract between the consenting parties consented to a contract. If later you want to argue that part of the contract was executed or operated in bad faith, that's easy enough to do. You read the contract, you examine the pattern of activities, and you argue logically and reasonably over whether or not the pattern of activities fits within the framework of the delegation from the contract.
Okay, I'm going to bring it all the way back to Aesop. Okay, Aesop's fables. All right, rabbit and bear are hungry. Rabbit and bear come across a field of carrots, and rabbit says to bear, hey, this is what we'll do. We'll split these up completely evenly. You can have those bright, pretty green parts that are on top, and all you have to do is just pull them off. I will deal with the yucky, dirty orange parts underneath that need to be washed off. Bear says, okay, fair deal. So Bear gets all the green parts of the carrots, and Rabbit gets all the orange parts of the carrots, and Bear realizes, PDQ, he got the shit into the stick. Yeah, yeah, he gets all the he gets all the stuff exactly as he and Rabbit agreed to it, 100%. But he comes away with basically inedible food. He can barely choke it down. And if they had a contract, you went back and you read their contract, both parties would have 100% fulfilled their end of it. And that's why I say good faith has to be a component of it. You could take that to a judge and you could say, Judge, look, he tricked me. I thought this was a good deal because, I don't know, I didn't understand how carrots worked or whatever. Or I thought this was a good deal because he's a rabbit. He already did stuff up. However you want to phrase it. And a
Yeah,
judge
that's what a
would be
private court for arbitration is for. Exactly that kind of a situation. You take your contract and argue this contract was executed in bad faith. One party took advantage of the ignorance of the other party. I mean, you're saying it like that's something that doesn't occur under the current system.
it does occur under the current system, but
And
there
what's
are
the remedy?
there are rules and regulations that spell out what the nature of a good faith argument of a good faith contract is.
Not really. Um, what you have is the concept of a good faith contract, and if you feel that your contract has been executed in bad faith, you've been defrauded through the process of your contract. What you do, in almost exactly the same way as the system that I'm describing, where the base rule is that the contract is sacrosanct, is you get a lawyer, you take it to court, and you enter arbitration, where you argue that the contract was executed in bad faith, and you have to argue what you believe the bad faith component is. As far as how the law reads on that, what defines bad faith is very much the argument and not the letter of the law, because there are so many ways that one could defraud another person. I could sell you a bunch of dihydrogen monoxide at an incredible markup based solely on the fancy sounding name, and when you walked away with $1,000 a gallon bucket of water, then you might feel like you had been defrauded. A reason a very reasonable judge might very reasonably make the claim on either side of that no, you should have known better, or no, this was clearly fraud.
But things like deception and fraud and theft and obfuscation, those are all defined in the law, and those are the things that point toward bad faith.
No, theft is not the same thing. Theft is not the same thing as fraud. Fraud is a type of theft, but theft isn't necessarily fraud.
I would just say that these are all things that are defined in the law, and they point toward bad faith activity.
Okay,
But
we're way off the topic of economics now. Um, I, so rather than detailing how I would deal with theft in a system that did not make theft a crime, and pointing out that while theft is not a crime, neither is murder, and so a wary thief should be careful. Um, that's entirely tangential to the conversation about the locus of economics. So let's bring it back to that again. The base concept is that base level capitalism is the only actual economic system, and everything else is an external perversion of that. So one of the big criticisms, of course, of capitalism is that it's unfair because wealth tends to accumulate at the top, and so you end up with a disparity of income levels throughout the ranks beneath the top, the 1%. The 1% and the 2% and the millionaires and the billionaires, except he doesn't say millionaires anymore because he wrote a book and made $1 million. And you could write a book and make $1 million too. The problem with that concept is that in no other economic system do you have the absence of that upper echelon party at which the bulk of wealth accumulates. The Pareto distribution is 100% reliable on the depository of wealth to the most productive until the most productive are replaced with the most efficiently corrupt. Wow, your video is deeply confusing, disorienting, and distracting at the moment, Cameron. Also, you're not in the center of the screen anymore. What are you pissing on the tree?
No, dude, I'm in a Home Depot parking lot. I'm about to have to let you go so I can go to work.
It sure did look like you were about to piss on that tree. If it helps, I'm sure the tree deserves it. Actually,
Yeah,
actually, that's a beautiful shot. I know it's an artificial bokeh on the bark in front of you, but it's actually a nice shot.
Yeah, that was one of those happy accident things.
So, yes.
Look, and as far as the broader point is concerned, yeah, I do think markets, it's all that exists. And it's only when you have interference in the markets that you have the things like the monopolies or whatever. Like, you look at North Korea. North Korea's poor as shit. But Kim Jong Un drinks a bottle of scotch every night. Scotch is expensive as hell. So, the People's Republic of North Korea didn't actually solve any of those economic problems. It exacerbated them. And then, honestly, to an even larger point, and people are like, "Oh, there's a wealth gap." Like, my response for some years now has been, "Good. There should be. If things are functioning correctly, some people are going to have more than others." I wish I could see the comments.
Okay, I'm just gonna have to read the comments to Cameron now, because this got excellent for just a second here. James Boyd, what's up, my brother? So I accused Cameron of looking like he was about to pee on that tree, and I said that the tree looks like it deserves it. And Fee asked, "Do any trees deserve it?" I said they all do. Lindsay says, "Looks like he's hiding." And Fee says, "The tree isn't asking for it just because it's outside." And I said, "Yeah, there's some shady looking mofos." And then Zaluskas the Slav comes back. "We made Agent Orange for a reason. And napalm." So I thought my shady conspicuousness pun was clever, but apparently it went over my wife's head. But in fairness, I'm a foot taller than she is. Which is how it should be. So, okay. So Cameron, you're gonna have to go to work. I'm gonna go back and watch through this show and pull the notes out. This is a topic that I want to develop aggressively And I think that we have hit some good points, and I've got some good notes from it to help me develop it. So I appreciate you coming on this morning, and yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Cameron, you got anything to close on, brother?
Nah.
You're too close. Dear God, that's creepy.
Ew.
That zit is terrifying.
Oh. Yeah.
I might not have put that one out there, brother. No, it's just, I mean, you leaned in so close, it was like that was the shot.
Thanks. All right, brother.
All right, you be safe out there. Y'all be safe out there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.